Chapter 25. Jacinta. I just meant to do a quick scan for cybernetics, purely out of curiosity to see if gorillas or turtledillos got replacement parts these days. Technically a breach of privacy, and I was prepared to say I'd hit the button on accident if anyone asked. A mechanic's pack can be awkward to handle, especially while walking. But all thoughts left my head when the screen lit up with tech floating in thin air. Tech that looked suspiciously like weapons. I rushed to strap my pack on. I needed the jet function right now. The first zap hit Khan square in the vest. I dodged to the side and squeezed the thrusters as the scene dissolved into anarchy. The little turtledillo attacked the human cop. Dragon barely got a snarl out before dropping, and startled exclamations told me that both Vitter and Roca had been zapped as well. I was already in the air, blasting toward the window at max speed. Khan shouted, "Geronimo," behind me. It was the same call he'd used in our last game of Lightball, after I'd told him choice tidbits from Earth history. I blasted out onto an empty street, then circled back, passing below the window in time for him to leap into space and grab my ankle. His vest was sparking and he barely made it. I flashed around the first corner I came to while Khan held on for dear life. No hiding spots here, too many pedestrians there. I really hoped they didn't have cloaked hoverbikes or some tracking device for the blast residue. I could hear the crackle fizz of Khan's vest from here. If I didn't land soon, one or both of us was likely to get electricity burns. There. Frillian architecture was always good for secluded crevices. I homed in on a spot between two flying buttresses and a sculpture of coral or whatever. Khan dropped from my ankle with a plop. While I maneuvered a landing, he scrambled to take off the vest. "What just happened?" I demanded. Khan was a mess of waving tentacles and the burble pop sounds that passed for the fiercest of curses in his own language. He didn't answer me directly. "I can't believe it," he ranted. "After all that talk about personal integrity, and they're both on the take. Of all the traitorous—" He was back to burbling. At least he'd gotten the vest off and shoved it into a corner where it wouldn't burn either of us. Or the building. Probably. "So now what do we do?" I asked. "They won't let us just go about our lives. Not when we can report them to whoever's actually trustworthy. I mean, somebody has to be trustworthy. Otherwise, they wouldn't have bothered to be secretive. Someone at the top must still be doing their job without canoodling with the criminal element." He settled his tentacles. "Yes. Possibly fewer people than I thought. Thanks, Travis. But there are still plenty of honest ones." He draped a pair of tentacles over his eyes. "It's just a matter of which." I leaned a shoulder against the stupid flying buttress, sniffing at the smell of the burnt vest. "We might have to wait for the seers. I mean, they are coming, right?" "That much I'm sure of," Khan said adamantly. "I saw the report. It could be a while, though." Neither of us liked the idea of waiting, but my scanner was no match for proper invisibility tech, and we were outnumbered to a degree that made me want to burble some curses, too. Laying low was our only option. But where? Khan's buddies couldn't be trusted. I wasn't about to swear that my own co-workers were any better, and my workplace had nowhere to hide anyway. The cops could easily find our homes. Roca's people might have given us shelter, but as Khan pointed out, we were likely about to be framed for any number of things, up to and including kidnapping her and the others. No, we needed an outside party who we could trust to stay away from the cops. I thought of an idea and wished I hadn't. "Do you remember Crackpot Loyal?" Khan burbled a swear word. "Oh, no." I'd told Khan about the guy already, and he'd admitted to getting the same offer, absurd wealth in exchange for breaking into the Hive's headquarters. Khan had turned it down. He'd told me that Loyal's cybernetic mods that day made him suspect that the guy was into recreational body part replacement, which just added to the list of questionable decisions on his part. I personally got the impression that Loyal's original robot parts were from an accident, judging by things he'd said offhandedly. But that didn't change the fact that his common sense was dismal, almost as bad as his relationship with the Hive and its various offshoots. "Loyal definitely won't rat us out," I said. "And I remember where he said he'd be. It's the same spaceport berth as a repair I did last week. Got any better ideas?" Khan dragged a tentacle across his face. "No, can't believe we're doing this." I opened my pack and started removing things. "Even better," I said. "We're doing this with you hidden in here because at least one of us can stay out of sight." Khan burbled at that, but climbed into the bag anyway. He barely fit, though he folded up small. I'd seen him fit into more unlikely places before. "Fly safely," he commanded as he zipped it shut, "or I will destroy your things." Duly noted. I left him a spot to peek out of, then gingerly put the pack on. It was awkward. Khan weighed more than the various battery canisters and spare wrenches I'd removed, but the thrusters were rated for much heavier loads than that, so I'd be fine. "Leaving your vest here," I said over my shoulder as I poked a toe into the inert pile. No more sparks, though the smell of burnt wires made me cough. Khan's voice was muffled. Good riddance. I wondered if he meant to leave the job behind with the uniform. But this wasn't the time to ask. Instead, I peeked over the dusty coral statue and decided it was as safe as possible. With my heart beating an action movie tempo, I jetted out around as many corners as I could find in quick succession. Civilians pointed after me. No shouts, no zaps. Good so far. Maybe we'd gotten lucky by going to ground so quickly. The bastards assumed I had flown farther and weren't looking here. Well, they'd have no reason to search the spaceport berths for us. My biggest worry was in being recognized as I flew very visibly above the roads. A mechanic in flight is like an ambulance with its siren going. People make way for us to reach the ailing cyborg or life support system or whatever other critical thing has called us. No one stopped me, but everyone saw. I took the sparsely populated roads as much as I could. By the time I reached the residential blocks across from the spaceport, my nerves were singing that our luck couldn't hold. I aimed for a secluded walkway between buildings and landed, no witnesses that I could see. I strolled briskly for a ways before ducking behind a large trash crate and unhooking the pack. "We're within walking distance," I murmured as I unzipped it for Khan to wriggle out. "Let me just change my appearance a little." While Khan played lookout and complained about the smell of the trash. Like smasher food that's too old to eat and waterwheel food that's already been eaten, I bundled away my uniform overshirt and untucked the black t-shirt I wore underneath. That at least covered the belt and harness clips, so it wouldn't be immediately obvious that I was dressed for jetpack use. I used a bandage to tie my puff of hair into a compressed ponytail. I'd worn worse fashions. Khan took a bit of bandage to give himself a headband, which counted as a worse fashion. Worried about time, I pulled out a shock blanket that I kept in case of injured patients and wrapped it around the pack. This would have to do. It's hard to walk casually when carrying an awkward armful. I did my best, eyes moving constantly while my head faced forward. Khan did an absurd swagger that I would have laughed loudly at under different circumstances. We passed humans big and small, Mesmer, and a handful of Roka's people. None gave us a second glance. We crossed the street and hurried along, casually, to the spaceport. No one stopped us there, or at the auto pay locker, smelled like feet, where we shoved the pack. The ramp down to the 300-level berths was likewise safe. Our luck couldn't last. It was lasting. I breathed a sigh of relief when we found the correct berth without incident. The little gray ship's door slammed open and Loyal rushed out to meet us with such exuberance that I started to worry all over again. "You changed your mind? Oh, I hoped you would. Come in, come in. I'd offer you snacks, but I don't have a thing you'd find edible." Loyal was just as golden, frog-eyed, and enthusiastic as the last time I'd seen him. We let ourselves be ushered into the ship, and if Khan felt as many misgivings as I did, he hid them well. Loyal had us wait in the airlock while he made sure the outer door shut all the way. Classy. The air smelled like fuel canisters and glue. I assumed the inside of the ship was the best place for secretive conversations, but nope. The door had barely closed before we were being peppered with ideas on how to help him get back the thing he'd lost, and any other thought that crossed his mind. "You're an honest, upstanding sort. I knew that when I met you," Loyal said to Khan. "Do you remember checking my license to transport water when I arrived? We had such a conversation. I come from an aquatic place. You can do a lot with water. That sounds gross, and I do not wish to pursue it further." Khan said he didn't remember, but there was no stopping the guy. And Jacinta here knows I'm on the up and up. He grinned at me. Why, I've never once asked for an illegal modification. New and unregulated at best. Oh, it will be handy to have both a mechanic and a security officer around since door codes should be enough. But you never know what kind of barriers we might find between us and my belonging, deep in such a criminal den. About that, Khan began. It took him some work, but he finally got through to Loyal that we were actually there for a different reason. Even when we made it clear that we couldn't safely show our faces to the station police, Loyal tried to find some way to convince us. I'm sure that will all get cleared up by the Seers, he said, and you'll get such a big promotion for removing my item from the Hive's clutches. Not if we get killed before the Seers arrive, Khan said flatly. And you haven't even told us what exactly this item is. It's important, I'll tell you that, Loyal blustered. I've gone to great lengths already to try to get it back myself. I even paid some hooligans to cause a distraction while I crept in alone. Of course, they made more of a ruckus than I bargained for, so that didn't turn out well, what with the lockdown and all. Wait, is the lockdown your fault? Khan demanded. You paid the gang to start that fight? With both of us glaring at him, Loyal managed to look slightly guilty, but only slightly. He did his best to slide the conversation back toward his original point, but neither of us was feeling particularly charitable by now. Look, Khan said, if you can't even tell us what was stolen, we can't help you. It was at that moment that the station's loudspeakers played an emergency alert tone. We froze. An unprofessionally worried voice announced that no one should panic, but we should, in fact, evacuate the station. Quickly, and orderly, of course, but quickly. There was a bomb, you see, with a very short timer. You have an hour, the voice said, then stopped. I heard a heartbeat of silence, then shouting pandemonium outside the door. Loyal smiled. I guess I can tell you what was stolen now. Khan flailed his tentacles like he wanted to slap the nose off the guy, and I was right there with him. But we had to be level-headed. Khan, I said, catching a tentacle as it flew past my head. All bets are off. If he can shut the bomb down, it's our obligation to go get it. Can you? Khan asked, his tentacles bristling while he glared at Loyal. Yes, he said with certainty. And if they've activated the timer, there's only one place they would put it. Chapter 26. Jacinta. Loyal was cagey about the details even now, but he did finally spill some of the beans. The bomb was a device meant for terraforming entire worlds. I'm afraid it will wreak unimaginable havoc on this space station, Loyal said, tapping his knuckles together with distracted clicks. Even the metal will rust and dissolve. It works through air, you see. The central ventilation hub is the place to set it off. We'd best hurry. This is dumb, and I object, Khan said. Anyway, there will be locks on every door leading there. Anything my clearance can't handle will be your job with the tools. He looked my way. If they've been quick about that framing, my clearance is gone already. Be prepared. I was as prepared as I could be, given the stupid circumstances. With all the people employed and bribed by the Hive, security forces, technicians, smuggling ships, they couldn't think up any better way of escaping the blockade than blowing us all the hell up. Jerks. I hoped the Seers interrogated them with extra tentacles. Amid a sea of people swarming toward the spaceport berths, Khan and I grabbed my pack from the locker. I thought of a single silver lining to this whole mess. If the Seers wanted to face-hug all the people who evacuated, their sweep would cover the crud cloud, too. Stranded folks ought to get a ride back to civilization, I thought as I strapped the pack on. And any raiders who haven't already lit out for greener pastures will be caught. Cold comfort now, but it's something. We met Loyal in front of the ship, where he'd brought out his transportation, a dinky two-seater hover thing. Khan didn't refuse to ride in the cargo bin, but he did complain creatively. It was either that or ride on my lap, swaddled in the shock blanket for minimum recognizability, which was much less dignified. Stinks in here, he said as he pulled the hatch shut. Motor oil and rotten bananas. Oh, that's the free sample of banana bread from, Loyal started to say. Don't care. Go. The hatch clicked. Going, Loyal sing-songed, sounding much too cheerful. Try not to step on it. Probably inedible by now. Before I could ask how long he'd left banana bread in there, we zoomed off into the crowd with my pack on my lap and my grip tight on the seat back in front of me. Good thing there was a handle built into it. I did not want to get my fingers crushed between the seat and the cyborg's metal spine. No one gave us a second look as we fought our way upstream away from the spaceport. Every single person was panicking to some degree. Some leapt over benches and each other in a rush to reach the ships. The general populace had been worried before when the lockdown happened, and unsettled at the prospect of Sears learning their every secret, but now they were flat-out terrified, desperate for any way to safety. I wondered if Loyal's little gray cruiser would still be there when he returned. I couldn't bring myself to care either way. Can't believe he caused the lockdown. Was that terraforming bomb really his originally? Did he bring it onto the station himself, or is that the Hive's fault? It'd be great if he actually explained himself. Maybe we'll get an answer out of him once the thing is shut down. But probably not. By the time we pulled into the control compound, I was more than ready for some breaking and entering. Loyal parked his hover thing between an unassuming little side door and the road, not that anyone cared what we were doing. I hit the latch to let Khan out of the cargo bin. He surged out, threatening to throw a moldy packet of what must have once been banana bread at Loyal, who just smiled and ushered him toward the door. "Time is short," Loyal said. "So is my lifespan now from having to smell that," Khan retorted. While they bickered, I put away the blanket and strapped my pack into place, giving up on stealth. We wouldn't be fooling anyone on the other end of the security cameras. Which reminds me, I thought, this is one of the doors that somebody tried to crack open. I'd repaired it myself not long ago, though it felt like another era. Back then, I'd believed the security guards who had complained of someone hacking the cameras but failing to hack the lock. They'd blamed young troublemakers. "Guys," I said as Khan activated the brainwave scanner on the door, "there's a good chance the Hive tried to break in just the other day and failed. I had to fix the damage. How would they leave a bomb here now?" Khan peered into the scanner grimly. "Several options come to mind. Either they didn't and were in the wrong place, or they got in through a different door, or they murdered the whole compound at once." The door slid open on an empty hallway. None of us moved. Or that gossip I heard about most of the staff getting replaced was actually their doing. Khan stepped inside. "Let's find out." I hesitated, then rushed after him. Loyal followed, towing his hover thing. It just barely fit, and it slowed him down trying not to bump the walls too hard. I knew that it would absolutely get stolen if left outside, but I had to wince at the noise. As I moved to shush him, I paused. "It's awfully quiet in here," I said, suddenly hyper-aware of the lack of voices or office work. Even the chaos outside was muffled. Khan had already moved forward on soft tentacles. "Keep an eye out for murders," he said. "Not funny," I told him as I followed. The place didn't smell like murder. Very clean. Loyal parked the hover thing in a corner. "The scoundrels must have evacuated before they announced the danger to all," he said. "Good news for us if they did. A little bit of selfishness on their part means we don't have to fight our way in." I looked back to ask a skeptical question about his fighting abilities, but Loyal was already hurrying past me with a wrist-mounted scanner showing him the way. Khan and I exchanged glances and let him go first. We passed through several doors and rooms, each more official-looking than the last, with not a soul to be found. Khan's clearance got us through every lock but the final one, which I made short work of with my nano-cutter. No time to mess around now. This was the primary control hub, a brightly lit room full of monitors, diagrams, and video feeds, all up and running, all completely abandoned. I couldn't even see anyone moving around on the security screens. The Hive really had infiltrated this place and left. "It will be at the most central location to spread airflow," Loyal said, moving from one screen to the next. "It's not coming up on my scanner yet, so the room must be shielded." Khan walked to the far side of the room. "Shielded, warded, and bomb-proofed," he said. "This one?" The screen he pointed to showed massive fan blades going full blast. Loyal rushed over. "Yes, that one." "I don't see anything bomb-like," Khan said, frowning at the screen. I didn't either. "Let's get inside to look in person," Loyal said, full of confidence. The scanner will find it once we're past the shields. We did. It didn't. The fan made it hard to hear in the echoey metal room, but Loyal had very clearly just told us that the scanner wasn't coming up with anything. If it's not here, Khan said with masterful restraint. Where is it? Loyal tapped madly at his scanner. Not here. I said that. I checked my watch while he spoke distractedly. Air whirled about my head like a bothersome ghost, which didn't do anything for my stress levels. It's a bluff, Loyal declared. They've realized that they don't need to actually detonate the thing in order to get past the lockdown. Just the threat is enough, especially with agents in the right places. The bosses will have taken all their most valuable assets to a hiding spot, to wait out the arrival of the seers. Thankfully, I had some time on my hands during that lockdown, and I put trackers on some of their ships. Probably even the right ones. How? Khan demanded. Loyal ignored him, checking a screen from another pocket. There we go. Look at that. They're all going to the same place. Makes sense, it's close by. The lower-ranking members will probably be ordered to disperse. He looked up and displayed a hollow image of a nearby sun, with planets and the space station marked as glowing dots. What is the name of this planet here? It must be newly contacted. It isn't named on my maps. I frowned at the image. The local name for it translates as biggest rock, I told him. If they're hiding there, we've got problems.